that 6 months later, fate would bring Vanessa back into my life, as someone standing outside my office, waiting nervously, for an interview she desperately needed. The following Monday began like every other. Coffee. Emails. Meetings. Deadlines. 6 months earlier, my life had looked like a sinking ship. Now, everything had changed. Not overnight. Not because of luck. Because after Vanessa walked away, I stopped wasting energy trying to convince people to believe in me. I poured every ounce of it into the company. Noah and I practically lived in the office. There were nights when we'd wake up with keyboard marks pressed into our faces. There were mornings when breakfast was a vending machine granola bar and cold coffee. Investors didn't magically throw money at us. We pitched. Got rejected. Improved. Pitched again. Got rejected again. Repeated the cycle. Then, one investor said yes. We had solved a problem businesses actually had. That first investment changed everything. Within weeks we hired our first employees. Within months we landed 3 major corporate clients. Then another 5. Revenue grew faster than any of us expected. We moved out of our tiny office into a modern building downtown. I finally replaced my old sedan. Just a reliable black SUV that didn't sound like it was begging for retirement every morning. I rented a comfortable apartment. Bought decent clothes. Paid off every debt my parents had quietly been carrying for years. That was the purchase that made me happiest. Not the apartment. Not the car. Seeing my father look at a zero loan balance after 20 years, that felt like success. Money hadn't changed me, it had simply removed problems that used to keep me awake. One thing, however, had changed completely. My standards. Not for wealth. For people. Anyone could smile when life was easy. Character revealed itself when life wasn't. And Vanessa had taught me that lesson better than anyone else ever could. Around 10 that morning, our HR manager knocked on my office door. "We've got interviews for the operations coordinator position." I nodded. "Anything I need to know?" "One candidate has a particularly strong resume." She placed a file on my desk. "I think you'll like this one. I'll join the final interview." "No problem." After she left, I continued reviewing financial reports. I hadn't even opened the resume. I didn't feel the need. HR had already narrowed everything down. An hour later, I walked toward the conference room carrying my notebook. Inside, 3 department managers were already seated. The first 2 interviews went smoothly. Good candidates. Professional. Prepared. Neither felt like the right fit. Then HR looked toward the reception area. Next applicant. The conference room door opened. And time stopped. Vanessa walked in. She wore a navy business suit. Her confidence disappeared the moment our eyes met. The folder slipped from her hands. Papers scattered across the floor. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Her face turned completely pale. "You," she whispered. I remained seated. "Good morning." The other interviewers looked between us in confusion. HR asked carefully, "You two know each other?" I answered calmly. "We used to." Vanessa still hadn't moved. She looked as though she'd seen a ghost. Finally she bent down, picked up her papers with trembling hands, and slowly took her seat. Her breathing was uneven. Mine wasn't. That surprised even me. 6 months ago, seeing her would have shattered me. Now, I mostly felt curious. Life really did have an unusual sense of timing. The interview began. One manager asked about her previous experience. She answered professionally. Another asked how she handled conflict. Again, a solid response. If I hadn't known her, I would have considered her an excellent candidate. Then my turn came. I looked down at her resume. "You left your previous company 3 weeks ago." "Yes." "What happened?" She swallowed. "The company downsized." "I see. You've applied to over 20 companies." She looked surprised. "Yes." "No offers?" "Not yet." I nodded. Then asked the question that changed the room. Why do you want to work here? Silence. A long silence. Finally she answered quietly. I've heard this company values hard work. I looked directly at her. Is that the only reason? Her eyes filled with uncertainty. No. I waited. I need a fresh start. Nobody else in the room understood the weight behind those words. I did. After the interview ended, the other manager stepped outside to discuss candidates. I remained seated. Vanessa stood slowly. I should go. You can. She reached the door. Then stopped. Without turning around she asked, did you know I was coming? No. If I had. I smiled faintly. I'd still have interviewed you. She finally looked back. For the first time since we'd met, I saw genuine embarrassment on her face. I'm sorry. I didn't answer. She continued. I know saying that changes nothing. No. It doesn't. She lowered her eyes. I deserve that. Before leaving, she quietly said, I really didn't know this was your company. I believe you. Then she walked away. That evening, I asked HR to schedule one final meeting. Not because she was my ex. Because I didn't want personal history influencing a hiring decision. If she wasn't qualified, she wouldn't get the job. If she was, I'd have to decide whether I could remain professional. The following afternoon, she returned. This time it was just the two of us. No interview panel. No HR. Only silence between two people who once planned forever. She looked exhausted. Much older than 6 months should have made anyone look. I appreciate you meeting me. She said. I had questions. So do I. She nodded. I figured. I leaned back. What happened? She understood immediately. The businessman. What happened to him? She closed her eyes briefly. I was never the only woman. I said nothing. He promised we'd travel. He promised we'd buy a house. He promised marriage. Another pause. He promised a lot. And he was already married. I wasn't expecting that. I found out after 3 months. He ended things the same day. She laughed bitterly. I wasn't even worth a proper goodbye. The irony hung heavily between us. Eventually she whispered, I finally understood how you felt. She continued speaking. She'd clearly carried them alone. I thought money solved everything. It doesn't. I thought expensive restaurants meant happiness. They don't. I thought luxury meant security. She looked around my office. I confused wealth with character. I remained quiet. I know everyone probably thinks I'm only apologizing because you become successful. I understand why. Maybe I'd think the same. She inhaled deeply. But I started regretting what I did long before I knew where you were. She opened her handbag. Pulled out a worn envelope. I've carried this for months. She handed it to me. Inside was a handwritten letter. Not 1 page. Nearly 10. I skimmed the beginning. It wasn't asking for another chance. It wasn't asking for money. It was simply an apology. A real one. She admitted her greed. Her impatience. Her arrogance. She admitted she had measured my worth using my bank account. She admitted she'd mistaken ambition for failure because results hadn't arrived fast enough. When I finished reading, I folded the letter carefully. I accept your apology. Her eyes widened. You do? Yes. She looked ready to cry. But I continued. Forgiveness isn't the same as going backward. She nodded immediately. I know. I wasn't asking. I don't deserve that. She stood to leave. Then hesitated. So. About the job. I answered honestly. You were one of the strongest candidates. She looked confused. You mean? I haven't decided yet. She blinked several times. I assumed you'd reject me. I considered it. She lowered her head. I would have understood. But then I'd be making the same mistake you once made. She looked up. I'd be judging someone's future entirely by their past. Silence filled the room. So here's my decision. You'll get the position. Her eyes filled instantly. But listen carefully. This isn't charity. You'll report to operations. Not to me. You'll earn exactly what every employee in your role earns. No special treatment. No personal meetings. If you succeed, it'll be because you earned it. If you fail, it'll also be because of your choices. She nodded so quickly she could barely speak. Thank you. No. I interrupted gently. Thank your qualifications. You got yourself hired. The months that followed surprised everyone. Including me. Vanessa never mentioned our past at work. Never tried to use our history. She arrived early. Stayed late. Helped teammates. Accepted criticism. Asked questions. Improved quickly. People respected her because of her work. Not because anyone knew who she used to be. Most employees never found out. And I intended to keep it that way. One afternoon, our operations director knocked on my office. I think we should promote Vanessa. I looked up. Oh. She's earned it. Interesting. Nobody had influenced that recommendation. Not me. Not HR. Just her performance. I signed the approval. That was the last time I involved myself in anything related to her career. Professional boundaries mattered. Nearly a year after she joined, our company celebrated another major milestone. 100 employees. Clients across 3 countries. Profitable. Growing. Stable. At the celebration dinner, people laughed, shared stories, and talked about how far the company had come. As the evening ended, Vanessa approached me outside the venue. I won't keep you. She said. I just wanted to tell you something. I waited. You gave me something I didn't deserve. I shook my head. No. I gave you an opportunity. What you did with it was your decision. She smiled sadly. I spent so much of my life chasing people with money. I never realized the richest quality someone can have is integrity. She looked toward the city lights. I lost someone who genuinely loved me. I'll regret that for the rest of my life. I didn't answer. Some regrets aren't meant to be erased. They're meant to teach. Before leaving, she smiled sincerely. I hope you find someone who sees your value before your success. This time. I hope it's forever. So do I. She walked away. Not as the woman who had broken my heart. Not as the woman who once chased wealth. Just another person trying to become better than who she used to be. A few months later, life surprised me again. At a charity technology workshop for college students, I met someone named Claire. She volunteered every weekend teaching coding to teenagers who couldn't afford expensive courses. She didn't know my title. Didn't care what car I drove. In fact, our first conversation lasted nearly an hour before she even asked what I did for work. When I told her, she simply smiled. That's nice. Then she asked about my favorite books instead. It felt refreshing. For once, someone was interested in the person, not the position. We became friends. Then something more. Slowly. Naturally. Without pretending. Without testing each other. Without wondering who earned more. Just honesty. One evening, while watching the sunset from a quiet park, she squeezed my hand and said, I like the man you are. Not the company. Not the success. Me. Those words healed wounds I hadn't even realized were still open. People often assume this story is about revenge. It isn't. Revenge would have been humiliating Vanessa during that interview. Rejecting her out of spite. Making her feel as worthless as she once made me feel. For a brief moment, I won't lie, the thought crossed my mind. But revenge would have chained me to my past. Forgiveness set me free. Success wasn't proving her wrong. Success was becoming someone who no longer needed her approval. The greatest victory wasn't sitting in the CEO's chair. It was realizing my happiness no longer depended on the woman who once walked away. Because the right people don't love you only after you've made it. They believe in you while you're still building. And if someone only sees your value after the world applauds you, they never truly saw you in the first place. That's the difference between someone who loves your future, and someone who only loves your fortune.